My wife, 31 female, and I, 30 male, were together for 3 years and married for one. We were both very athletic people. We actually met in a gym and started flirting immediately. It was so easy to be around her and talk. I never talked so much before I met her. We became best friends and lovers. When we got married, our parents were just as excited as us. My parents paid for most of our wedding and helped us purchase furniture and things to start off. A new gym opened by our house, so we got memberships right away. I was really optimistic and hopeful at this point in my life. I really had no idea how challenging marriage could be. After just 1 year of marriage, it was like the infatuation wore off and we started to get irritated with each other. She felt like I wasn't opening up or communicating enough, but sometimes I just wasn't in the mood to talk. Nothing was bothering me. I just didn't have anything to say. We got through this once by talking things out, acknowledging our differences, and promising to focus more on each other's needs instead of our own. Then my wife suddenly started having her gym trainer over to her house twice a week. Her reasoning was that she'd hit a plateau and bringing the trainer to her would help her to reach her new goals. Well, I wasn't born yesterday. We didn't have weights or machines in our house. I knew our relationship was getting older, and my wife was naturally a very flirty woman. I didn't want to be overly controlling and tell her I didn't want him in our house. I just wanted to see what she'd do with this freedom and trust. We had a hired security guard at our home, so I didn't feel overly anxious when I had to go to work. After the second week, she had her trainer at the house. I arrived home and asked him if my wife was behaving. He just shrugged uncomfortably. I asked him what he thought was going on, and he said he couldn't give me a fair guess because each time she had the trainer over, she sent him on a break. I was appalled. My wife was dismissing the man that could tell me if she was cheating. I asked if I could pay him extra to keep an eye on my wife, even if he had to lie to her and pretend he was going on break. He agreed. It was nearly summer, so my wife had the side windows of the house open on the day our security guard snapped pictures for me. I was at work 4 days after I asked him to watch her when I received them. It was like a slap in the face. I didn't actually expect my wife to be sleeping with her trainer, but my small suspicion and bribery led to the brutal truth. I was being cheated on by a shallow, flirty, sleazy woman that I tried to call my wife. I trusted her and gave her everything I could offer, but it wasn't enough for her to try and live an honorable life with me as her husband. All these thoughts and more rushed through my head as I printed the picture evidence and drove home from work. I thanked the security guard with a wave the moment before I unlocked and shoved the door open. They must have heard the door unlocking because they quickly got into positions that looked like training. With trembling hands and a faltering voice, I showed them the printed pictures of what they just did minutes earlier. The trainer's face turned ghostly white. He didn't want me to kill him, so ran out instantly and sped away in his car. My wife dropped her knees. She said this was the first and only major mistake she'd ever made in her life. She promised that if I forgave her for this, she would become the perfect example of what a wife should be to her husband. I completely doubted this, but I'm not a very expressive person, and the level of emotion I was feeling was too much to bear. I reverted back to spy mode, knowing I wouldn't stay married to this woman. No matter what, she would suffer for this. I told her that only a loyal, good wife deserves the things I provided for her, like jewelry, a hairstylist, a car, high-end clothing and shoes, everything. So I packed it all away and locked it in the trunk of my car. It took all day, and my wife was sobbing almost the entire time. Even though she swore to do everything I asked of her, she didn't help me. I think she might have suspected I was going to divorce her, but she was too afraid to ask. She also didn't want to tell her parents anything about what was going on, because they raised her right. They wouldn't be dashing to her rescue just because she let another man inside her home. No responsible or honorable woman does that. She slept on the couch for a week without her normal routine or privileges. She actually cleaned a lot, in the hopes that would earn my forgiveness. While she scrubbed the floors like Cinderella, I plopped divorce papers down. She really lost it. When she realized none of her begging and sobbing worked on me, she left the house to call her parents. They came and got her, but only long enough to lecture her, buy her some Walmart clothes, and bring her back to my house. It was humorous and frustrating at the same time. Eventually, the divorce was done. Through the process, she was sleeping on the couch of our home until she was ordered to leave. She tried asking if she was entitled to half of my business, and the judge laughed at her. He shook his head and told her she had a lot of growing up to do, that she lost a great man and provider because of her actions. She didn't even have enough patience in our marriage to ensure she was entitled to half my business upon divorce. She made it clear that she wasn't very bright, and she only thought about herself. OP, I am so sorry your wife went behind your back to sleep with her trainer. She brought him to your house while you worked for no reason other than to start an affair. A mature woman would never flirt or put herself in a situation to be alone with another man. Marriage has enough drama and tribulations without unnecessary temptation. Two people with individual minds must be willing to be honest and do everything in their power to have empathy and consideration for the person they married. It's lucky you have a security guard to clue you in on what was happening sooner rather than later. Your wife didn't deserve the life of security and love you had in store for her, and thankfully you weren't married long enough for her to get any part of what you worked so hard for. Thank you for sharing your story. I wish you all the best. Now, let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I were married for a long time. She was never very fond of fishing. My father raised me with a fishing rod in hand by the water or on a boat, so she went along with me sometimes, but for the most part she didn't want me to go. After years of marriage, we learned about compromising, so we let the other person come and go as they pleased as long as we kept each other in the loop. My wife would often go visit her mother or siblings. I would go fishing. I met a man at the lake who also liked to fish. He was great at it and always came well prepared with drinks he was willing to share. Sometimes his wife came along with him, and she wasn't bad either. I'll refer to them as Mr. and Mrs. Fisherman. When I told my wife I met a fisherman friend that brought his wife with him sometimes, she was instantly jealous and worried that I had flirted with Mrs. or liked her. I was too mature to feed into this, so I just laughed and told my wife I thought she was cute for being possessive of me. I had no idea she was about to ruin my life. She wanted to start tagging along on my fishing trips so she could get to know the people I hung out with. I think the four of us went on about 6 fishing trips together. In between those were times where I went alone or just me and Mr. Fisherman would go. On a night when I fished alone, I got a text from Mrs. Fisherman. She asked me if I was with her husband because he told her his plans were to go fishing with me. I told her no, I wasn't, which was decidedly out of character for him. He was usually very true to his word. I waited another hour and 15 minutes before packing up and going home. I was surprised my wife wasn't there. I called her several times with no answer. She returned home after 20 minutes, breathless. She said she didn't expect me back so soon and that she'd gone to a Zumba class. This was pretty hard to believe. My wife did Zumba occasionally, but the class never went this late, and it was far enough of a drive that she should have caught her breath by now. I wasn't sure how to approach her about it. We'd been married for 48 years, so the fact that I was suspicious of her was devastating. I just asked her if she knew where Mr. Fisherman was. As soon as I asked, I felt my phone vibrate with a text. My wife's heart was pounding, but she tried to be as normal as possible as she told me she hadn't seen him. She couldn't look me in the eye. I went upstairs to take a shower and found Mr. Fisherman's hat. Puzzled and growing concerned, I could only think the worst. I pulled out my phone and saw the text from Mrs. Fisherman. She said Mr. Fisherman just got home and he was acting weird. He said he lost his hat at the lake with me, but she already knew I didn't see him that evening. I sent her a picture of his hat laying on the floor of my bedroom. It was easy to see the bed was made in a hurry. We were disturbed at this point, figuring they must have slept with each other secretly. It was slightly easier to go through this with someone that was experiencing the same betrayal. They'd been married 43 years. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but surround yourself with people. Talk to people about what you're going through because I never expected to lose the love of my life to something so needless and avoidable. After we grieved a little, we decided the next logical step would be to catch them in the act, and since we were certain they were seeing each other behind our backs, we went ahead and prepared divorce papers. I was at work 3 days later with divorce papers ready when Mrs. Fisherman texted me saying Mr. Fisherman said he was going fishing, but she didn't believe him. A follow-up text said she went to the lake shortly after he left, and he was nowhere in sight. We met outside my house and quietly unlocked the door. We heard noises upstairs, so we ran up with racing hearts and found them having sex. I had to look away while they freaked out and ended the session, frantically starting to dress. My wife was already crying. AP just kept saying Mrs. Fisherman's name, staring at her as he dressed, like if he looked away she'd disappear. They were both realizing how bad they messed up. They were just caught betraying us, the two people who loved and supported them for most of our lives. This level of betrayal and the feeling you get is indescribable. I had no idea how to behave. I was embarrassed, so I just threw the divorce papers at my wife's feet and left. Mrs. Fisherman ran out of the house with her cheating husband, AP, following close behind. They were divorced by the time my wife and I were. We had adult children that were so disappointed in her. Their relationship was never the same. They were as surprised and hurt as I was. She moved into a place 45 minutes away. The rest of her life didn't compare to what she lost. Everything she lived for the past 48 years was gone or tainted. I'm grateful for my kids calling me and keeping me involved with family affairs. Let this be a lesson to all. Cheating only brings pain and regret. Opie, I can't believe your wife cheated on you with a married friend you met fishing. It started as something fun and calm to do together with another couple who were also married for a long time. Your ex turned it into an unexpected opportunity to bring distrust and the end of your marriage. It's a shame that they couldn't resist this temptation for the betterment of their relationships and the lives they built with each of you. Because of this senseless infidelity, your wife's relationship with her kids has changed for the worse. I'm glad you had support during this, and after the fact as well. Do your best to remain hopeful and treat others the way you'd like to be treated. Honesty and compassion are main ingredients and everyday practice in a meaningful, successful marriage. I hope you are able to heal from this. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Here is my story. My wife and I married 2 years after dating, and she moved in with me. And a year after we married, she got pregnant and gave birth to a boy. It was one of the happiest moments of my life because I had always longed to be a father. Even before the baby was born, I made everything he would need available. We started shopping for baby stuff after we knew the baby's gender, and I even built his nursery myself. I wanted our child to be received with love and everything to be perfect, so I didn't hold back in spending. During her pregnancy, I cared for her in every possible way. It was difficult because she had those weird cravings, and each time she needed something, I got it for her, even if it was at an odd hour of the night. When the baby came, I was so happy, and I did everything possible to make life comfortable for my wife and child. To make my wife happy, I got her the latest iPhone as her push gift. I worked from morning to night to ensure I put food on the table and provided all their needs, even if it meant neglecting mine. We lived in peace and harmony until the baby was 6 months old. I noticed that my ex-wife started acting weird. There was a particular caller who never took the calls, and most times, she would turn off the phone if the caller didn't stop calling. If she took the call, she'd go outside for it and spend time before she returned, which was very suspicious. The first time I asked about it, she told me it was a wrong number, but the more the caller continued calling, the more I was convinced it wasn't. Then one day, all hell broke loose. I was home that weekend resting inside when someone knocked at the door, and naturally, she went to get the door. Immediately she got to the door, I heard a man raise his voice, and before I could wrap my head around what was going on, she shut the door behind her. I was curious about who it was, especially since I kept calling her name, and she did not respond. When I went outside, I recognized the man that was yelling. It was her ex-husband. I recognized him from the photos she showed me. He was obviously furious and kept yelling at her to let him see his son. My first reaction was to order him off my property, but he said he wasn't leaving until he had seen his son. I was very confused because I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought my ex-wife would say something about the son he was yelling about, but she didn't. Instead, she yelled at him and called him names. She mentioned something about him being a cheat and a liar, and in anger, he called her a bigger liar, and he turned to me with the "I'm shocked you didn't know" look. Without wasting time, he told me that he was the father of the my ex-wife gave birth to, and she was only living with me because I took good care of her. It sounded like a lie, but it wasn't. Even as I type this, I still feel the hurt I felt that day. It turned out that her ex-husband was telling the truth. I found out that she still met with him, and they got intimate whenever they met, and the reason she stopped taking his calls was because her ex-husband wanted to be part of the baby's life, but she refused, claiming he was a bad influence on the baby. At first, I didn't believe it. I wanted her to tell me he was lying, but she didn't. She started sobbing and even physically attacked him for ruining her life. I was so devastated, and I couldn't even control my tears. After everything I had done for her and the baby, I didn't think she would betray me that way. All that while, I treated her with love, made hard sacrifices, and even built the nursery myself, because I excitedly believed she was pregnant with our child. I still had doubts, so to be sure, we did a DNA test, which confirmed I was not the father of her baby, and I was very heartbroken. Without thinking twice, I kicked her and the baby out of the house. It was a very painful thing to do, especially with her innocent son crying. Funnily enough, she refused to leave that day. She kept begging for mercy and saying that her ex-husband would not help her raise the child, and that I was still the child's father, irrespective of what happened. But I still kicked her out. I also collected the car I got for her, because it was registered in my name, and I was still paying for it. We divorced because I could not just forgive her or pretend nothing happened. Although she begged and called me several times, there was nothing I could do. She used me and was cheating on me with her ex-husband. In the end, I lost her. I lost the connection I had with the baby, and everything else went down the drain. All of the money, time, resources, and sacrifices I made counted for nothing. And although I have nothing on women, I don't think I'll ever trust and fall in love again. As for my ex-wife, she ended up raising the child alone. The last time I heard, her ex-husband had 3 baby mamas, so I guessed she was the 4th. I haven't fully moved on, but I know I'll get there. Oh, V, I know you're still hurting, but you should be glad things turned out this way. If her ex-husband did not show up at your house, you would have probably raised the boy, and in the end, he'd still go back to his father. I'm glad you didn't take her back, and you didn't let her manipulate you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now, let's move on to the next story of the day. My wife, 31 female, and I, 35 male, were married for 4 years, and I never believed we would live apart until I discovered a shocking truth. From the first time I met my ex-wife, she had always been a yoga lover. Aside from yoga, she was always obsessed with having the perfect body, harnessing her spiritual side, and stuff I never understood. In fact, the first day I met her, she was on her way back from one of her yoga classes with her group of friends, and I liked her instantly. She had just graduated from college, and there was this spark she had that I loved about her. She was full of life, laughed a lot, and everything with her was beautiful. I was eating when she came into the restaurant with her other yoga buddies, and I was forced to pay for their meal to get her number. Something about her pulled me closer to her, and I only felt that way once in a blue moon. After I got her number, I called her immediately so she could save mine, and when I returned from work that evening, we spoke on the phone. The end of our conversation resulted in us picking a day to eat together and get to know each other, which turned out to be very successful. From our first date, I discovered that we had much in common and similar interests. Like me, my ex-wife believed there was a way to get successful at a very young age and retire at 50. She was open to trying out new ideas and buying courses that could help improve her, and she even had 2 YouTube channels to her name. Aside from my unexplainable attraction for her, my ex-wife was very intelligent. I guess it had to do with her studying business management, but she was also street smart. Even as friends, she always recommended books, seminars, and things that could help us make it early in life, and this alone was a big green flag for me. Whether it was health, personal development, career, or any will of life, my ex-wife always seemed to have everything under control. She was good with everything she did, and I even began to draw motivation from her. I was always looking forward to spending time with her, learning from her, and getting recent updates from her, and because I was one of the few guys who listened to her and praised her for her commitment and discipline, we got close very fast. In a matter of weeks, she knew where I lived, and I knew where she lived, too. Even without dating her, I had imagined what it would feel like to spend the rest of my life with her and how much we would grow. Not to brag, but she was different. She wasn't the regular girl who only thought about buying the next shoes, hair, cloth brand, or makeup. For her, it was how to get a big break and retire for life. She didn't subscribe to the idea of working all her life and enjoying it old age, and I belonged to that school of thought. Eventually, we became good friends, and the more I spent time with her, the more I grew to like her. The good thing was we were both single, and I was open to taking a chance with her. Right from my early teens, I had always loved intelligent girls who would blow me off my feet with their super brains, and I believed my prayers were answered when I met my ex-wife, but I was wrong. We were friends for 7 months before I asked her out. I didn't want to wait any longer before someone else would take her away from me, and from the first month of our relationship, I felt we were made for each other. Months after we started dating, the level at which she influenced me grew too, and many things changed in my life. We were the perfect couple, and every day I thanked God for meeting her. As of the time we met, I was earning little, but I tried my best to gift her occasionally, even though they weren't expensive. I got her most of those books on business, advertising, and even one popular marketing book. The ads were everywhere. After about 2 years of dating, she got her lucky break. She was contacted to be a business consultant for a top company in our country, which turned things around for us. I worked as a marketer and tried my best to close big deals. Within the first 2 years of dating my ex-wife, I closed deals I could not close in 4 years, and although it wasn't a lot of money, it was a stepping stone for me. Shortly after that, things started to fall into place for us. I improved with marketing, persuading clients, and closing deals. She grew too. We married after dating for 3 years, and our lives continued improving. Before we married, we agreed to not have children until we reached a specific financial goal, and we didn't change the plan. We were driven by early success, and I believed that the same way famous, successful men and women had done it, we could do it too. For the first 3 years of our marriage, we put in a ton of effort, had sleepless nights, brainstormed together, started a business, and even sacrificed many things to achieve our dreams. The only luxury we had was the food we ate and the apartment we lived in. We owned one 2005 model car and invested every money we made from our jobs in the business we were trying to grow. Luckily, we had the most significant break in the 4th year of our marriage. Sales skyrocketed, and even top organizations knew about us. In our 4th year of marriage, we decided to go on a vacation, the first after our small honeymoon vacation. I was so excited about it and happy, because my dreams had become a reality. We were able to move into a bigger and more comfortable apartment, and our business was doing well. We increased the number of our remote staff, and everything could be handled even in our absence. The money was rolling in steadily, and I was glad my ex-wife and I could finally live the life we had been dreaming of. I envisioned our vacation to be mind-blowing, full of intimacy and rekindling our love, but it opened my eyes to a very painful truth that I can't get over to date. While we were on vacation, my ex-wife was still connecting to her yoga classes online. It was just a part of her I had to deal with. She was committed and never missed a day, whether sick or not. On the 3rd day of our vacation, after we had gone out that morning, we returned to the apartment and rested. That afternoon, she said she was going for a walk and asked if I'd join her, but since I was still sleepy, I told her I would stay back and rest. Unfortunately, after she left, I couldn't sleep anymore and couldn't contact her because she didn't go out with her phone. I became bored and decided to play a game on her tablet. I didn't use my phone because I would wander off and spend the whole afternoon working or conversing with my staff. As soon as I started playing the game, a notification popped up, and it was from her yoga instructor. The last message he sent her read, "I love you," and had love emojis at the end, which I thought was odd. At first, I thought her yoga instructor was only being nice to her, but a part of me wanted to learn more. So I clicked on the message, and it opened me to their main WhatsApp chat. What I saw afterward made my heart bleed. I found messages that dated back a year, and there were all forms of voice notes between them. They also exchanged their nudes, said dirty things to each other, and would occasionally make jokes about other members of their yoga class. I could not believe that my ex-wife was cheating on me with her yoga instructor, and she hid it effortlessly. Because we were also so busy on our phones, I never suspected anything fishy was going on. I'd even found out that they were always meeting at different hotels to get intimate, and each time they were together, they made videos of them in bed or in the bathroom together. On that day, I realized that my ex-wife was not obsessed with yoga, but she was obsessed with her yoga instructor. She repeatedly told him she worshipped the ground he walked on and said things to him that she had never told me. According to her messages, he was her spiritual guide and opened her eyes to the real truth. Reading all those weird things and seeing pictures and videos of them together destroyed a part of me. Even if I had been told by a psychic that my wife was cheating or would cheat on me, I would not have believed it. I trusted her with everything, and I wanted more than anything to spend the rest of my life with her. When I had seen enough, I forwarded all the messages, pictures, and videos to my phone and cleared every trace that I had touched her phone. I returned to bed before she returned, but she could tell I was sad about something. She pressed to know what it was, and I lied to her that I had lost a mega deal and felt terrible about it. I pretended to be sick 2 days later, and our vacation was cut short. When we returned, I knew she wouldn't miss her yoga class the next day, and she didn't. An hour after she left that morning, I surprised her at her class, and I asked if I could play her something on their general screen in her presence, and her yoga instructor agreed. Immediately, the first video started playing. Everyone gasped in surprise and turned to her and their yoga instructor. I watched my ex-wife stand there in confusion with tears in her eyes. She had tried to walk closer to me, but ended up running out of the hall in embarrassment. Her yoga instructor tried to hide his shame, but I played the recording too, and everyone saw their messages. It was such a big mess. When I got home, I realized that she had moved some of her things out of our room, and she left a small note which read, "I'm sorry," and that was the end of the road for us. We ended up divorcing and splitting every money we made from the business, and as for her yoga instructor, he was fired, and neither he nor my ex-wife dared show their faces at the facility again. I knew I could survive without her, but despite everything we had achieved together, I still hate her for doing what she did to me. She couldn't even face me to apologize or something. She just dropped a note. We haven't spoken to each other since then, and it's been 2 years now, and I've still been struggling to move on. It's terrible how good men always end up with unappreciative women. I'm so sorry this happened to you. It has happened, and it doesn't make sense for you to keep holding on to the past. Your ex-wife chose to cheat on you with her yoga instructor, and you shouldn't punish yourself for that. I understand she played a significant role in your life, but it's time to let go. I'm happy to hear that you didn't try to make things work, especially since she didn't show any form of remorse. You're stronger than you think. You just need to find your strength again. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Today I confronted her, and the aftermath was something I had never witnessed before. It was an intense experience that left me shaken. I want to clarify that the following account was written on the day it happened, so my emotions might not perfectly align with the comments I made in the past few days. Please understand that I have a lot to process, and as a result, I may not be available to respond for a while. This incident has deeply affected me, and I hope to never endure something similar again. Confronting her today was undoubtedly the most challenging task I have ever faced. I find myself experiencing occasional tremors as if my nerves are on edge. She left today. Whether it was for work or to see Chris, I'm uncertain. I attempted to check her location, but either she had disabled it or my phone was malfunctioning. I lacked the means to track her down and address the situation. The anticipated confrontation is scheduled for later this week, but I couldn't afford to wait any longer. I needed to confront her before she had a chance to come up with any more elaborate fabrications. As I heard the sound of the garage door opening, I quickly activated the camera. She entered the room completely unaware of what was about to happen. I urged her to take a seat, trying to hide my own apprehension as her expression transformed into that of a deer caught in headlights. Finally, she complied and asked me what was troubling me. I asked her directly, "Why don't you just tell me?" She feigned ignorance, but I could sense that she was aware she had been discovered. With a hint of desperation, she repeated her question, asking me once more what was troubling me. Choosing a slightly different approach, I inquired about her relationship with Chris, urging her to be honest. She denied any involvement, claiming she hadn't heard from him. Instead of confronting her head-on, I decided to shift gears. I expressed my discomfort with her working alongside him, explaining that it was something I couldn't overlook or move past in our relationship. To my surprise, she immediately acquiesced, her agreement apparent in her demeanor. Nervously, she inquired about my sudden change of heart and the unusual way I was behaving. Shaking my head, I tried to articulate my perspective, expressing that I had initially wanted to be understanding but had grown uncomfortable due to unsettling vibes I had sensed from him. I made it clear that I preferred they didn't communicate. She insisted that Chris held no significance in her life anymore, emphasizing that her happiness stemmed solely from witnessing the book's completion. I informed her that he essentially took advantage of her, and she is far too forgiving considering the situation warrants legal action. Surprisingly, she agrees with me. At this point, she's likely contemplating ending her relationship with Chris as soon as she finds an opportunity. However, I then revealed to her that the entire ordeal has caused me immense stress, prompting me to take a week off from work. I informed her that during our conversation, I spoke with my ex who graciously agreed to take care of our son for the weekend, allowing us to go to Vegas together. That's why I had a lengthy conversation with my ex the other day, discussing the logistics of her looking after our son. Or at least, that's the explanation I want her to believe. However, my attempt to mislead her is abruptly interrupted when she informs me that our Vegas trip has been canceled today due to unforeseen circumstances. The conversation from here on goes like this, paraphrased, of course. Me. It got canceled last month. Her. No. He told us today because he wasn't sure whether or not it was off until today. Me. I know it got canceled last month. Her. What are you doing? Why are you telling me you want to go and then telling me it's canceled? I don't get what you're doing. Me. It was canceled last month. What were you going to do if I didn't ask about it? Her. You're freaking me out. Me. It was actually canceled today. So, what were you planning to do? Or, what are you accusing me of? How long have you and Chris been back together? Or, have we not done anything? Did he tell you that we are you and me? Please don't lie to me. I don't want to go through the painful task of reading out all the hurtful things he texted. It almost made me sick when I did it the first time. I can't believe you would do this. Her. I love you. I'm sorry. He's been texting me a lot lately and saying a lot of messed up stuff. And I don't know how to handle it. It was canceled today. Me. What were you going to doing? Or, what are you accusing me of? Me. How long have you and Chris been back together? Or we haven't done anything. Did he tell you we were? Me. Don't lie to me. I don't want to read off everything he texted. It almost made me throw up doing it the first time. I can't believe you do this. Her. I love you. I'm sorry. He's been texting me a lot lately and saying a lot of messed up stuff. And I don't know how to deal with it. It's part of the reason why we broke up. I told you that I knew I shouldn't have responded to his messages. It's always drama with him. All his messages were fine. But he started with the missing me stuff again. Like always, I was going to tell you he wanted you to come home and kiss me after you were going down on it. I read your messages. I saw them in your email and in your texts. You're cheating on me. And I want you out of this house today. Or what? I'm not cheating on you. If you don't want him around, I'll tell him to get lost. But honey, I'm not cheating on you. Is that what he told you? He's lying. Me, stop it. I told you I went in your messages on your phone. You're going to get your stuff, and you're going to go to your parents. I made copies of your emails and screenshots from your texts. I refuse to conceal the content of your conversations any longer. If you persist in deceiving me directly, I will take the necessary steps to reveal it. Our relationship is over. Please collect your belongings. Despite everything that has transpired, I must acknowledge that she made an attempt to feign ignorance and continue with the falsehoods. However, her facade eventually crumbled under the weight of the evidence as I handed her the printed copies of your text exchanges. As she glanced at them briefly, her emotions overwhelmed her and she broke down into inconsolable tears, displaying a level of devastation I had never witnessed before. Initially, I experienced a brief moment of sympathy towards her. She expressed remorse, claiming that the situation had spiraled out of control and she wished to put an end to it. However, She revealed that her partner had become possessive and resorted to threats of exposing their relationship if she tried to break things off. I pointed out that none of these details were evident in their text conversations, emphasizing that she was continuing to deceive me. She had planned to spend the upcoming weekend with her partner, but she suddenly declared that it was over between them and assured me that she would make sure he ceased to be a part of her life. She assured me adamantly that she would sever all ties with him, vowing never to engage in conversation with him again. Meanwhile, I informed her that I had taken steps to consult with a lawyer and the divorce papers would be prepared in the near future. Upon hearing this, she erupted in outburst, repeatedly exclaiming, "You've been talking to a lawyer." The intensity of her reaction escalated to a point where I felt concerned for my safety, and I contemplated contacting the authorities in an attempt to defuse the situation. I urged her to calm down and reassured her that our interaction was being recorded by a surveillance camera. Subsequently, she continued to experience a profound emotional breakdown, appearing unrecognizable compared to anyone I had encountered before. She persistently accused me of orchestrating a meticulous plan, smiling deceitfully as I supposedly plotted everything. In response to each accusation, I reiterated the evidence of her own actions, pointing out how she had been scheming and displaying a false demeanor towards me while engaging in questionable activities. Attempting to make sense of the situation, I questioned why she would inflict this pain upon us. Initially, she struggled to provide a coherent response, leaving me without a clear understanding of her motivations. She attempted to explain that it was merely a meaningless period of enjoyment, to which I retorted with, "So you essentially destroyed our relationship for no valid reason. And that's wonderful." As time went on, she became somewhat more subdued, leaving me uncertain whether her words were genuine or an attempt to inflict pain. However, it became apparent that she deeply regretted her actions with him, referring to him as her soulmate. I was overcome with intense emotions, almost to the point of wanting to destroy objects in my surroundings. I couldn't help but question why she hadn't chosen him over me from the start. I would have been more understanding if she had explained that she wanted to distance herself from him due to concerns about her family's disapproval and the negative impression it would leave. It appears that her family held unfavorable opinions of him as well. Additionally, she emphasized that she could never truly be with him, as her ex-partner and daughter would strongly oppose such a decision. Returning to him was never a realistic option for her. Afterward, she expressed remorse and seemed astonished by my resolute stance on the matter. She admitted to the gravity of her mistake and pleaded for a chance to make amends, promising to do whatever it took to repair the situation. In response, I firmly declined her offer. She then asserted that we wouldn't be getting a divorce, believing that she could make things right. However, I informed her that there was nothing she could do to regain my forgiveness. I made it clear that I would never forgive her for what had transpired. Surprisingly, she displayed astonishment in the face of my unwavering stance. I informed her of my actions, revealing that I had recently opened an account in a separate bank and transferred half of the funds from our joint account into it. The remaining balance was hers, and she had the option to retrieve it herself or allow me to handle the matter. I made it clear that the joint account would be closed. She simply nodded in understanding and suggested that we would likely need to visit the bank together to complete the closure process. Subsequently, she began calmly packing her clothes, occasionally shedding tears and curiously interspersing threats that nothing should go missing. I shrugged it off and calmly suggested that she document the condition in which she left her belongings and her daughter's belongings. This way, when she returned, she would be able to see for herself. I assured her that I hadn't touched anything. Her parents were informed, and they were astounded by the situation. They expressed their surprise that Chris was even involved and spent time apologizing to me. Shortly after she left my house the following day, my ex-spouse bombarded my phone with numerous texts expressing love and apologies, insisting that we could resolve the issues. It got to the point where I considered getting rid of my phone altogether. I contemplated switching off my phone, but since my ex-wife had custody of our son, I felt it was necessary to keep it on in case of any emergencies or last-minute changes when he was returning home. Instead, I found myself responding to her text messages by sending screenshots of the most unpleasant parts of our conversation, choosing to remain silent. To my surprise, my ex eventually arrived with our son and even brought dinner from my favorite Chinese restaurant. When I broke the news to my son, I didn't provide him with all the details, but he directly asked if his mother had cheated on me. The suddenness of the situation led him to make that assumption, and without delving into specifics, I confirmed his intuition. They stayed with me for a while before heading back home, but ever since then, it feels like we've all been in a state of limbo, trying our best to maintain some semblance of normalcy within the house. As I write this, a couple of days have passed, and I'm about to head to the gym before meeting with my lawyers. This situation has become incredibly overwhelming, with new developments unfolding at a rapid pace. I could spend hours typing and still not capture all the updates regarding my soon-to-be ex-husband. He is scheduled to pick up his daughter's belongings, and I will do my best to explain to her that she can always reach out to me if she needs anything. As for contemplating whether to disclose to her ex-husband about her involvement with Chris, it seems like a futile endeavor. It wouldn't achieve much in the grand scheme of things. Anyway, I've already fought and won the first battle in this ordeal, but there's still much more to come. Given the circumstances, it's hard to define winning, but I've managed to navigate through this challenging situation as best as I can. Although there's a part of me that desires to confront Chris, I recognize that it would only drain my time and energy, accomplishing very little. It would be wiser to focus on my work, hit the gym, or find a meaningful way to express my gratitude to my ex-wife, who has been an absolute MVP, supporting me throughout this entire ordeal. Well, that's all I can share for now. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what— Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Relationship Haven. My name is Gary, and I hope you're all having a fantastic day or evening, wherever you are. In today's first story, Opie found out that his wife, who he just married a month ago, had been cheating on him with his best friend while they were in their engagement period. After his wife stopped the affair partner then took his own life. Now, his wife wants to reconcile, but Opie knows what happened and will be serving her with divorce instead. In the second story, Opie found out his wife cheated on him while he was at his cousin's funeral. Now, let's get into today's stories. I and my wife have been married for just over a month. My friend worked with me for 3 years and was one of my best friends. One day, we were lying in bed and she received a message from one of my friends and immediately swiped up. I asked her what it was and she told me she wants to protect his privacy. I reminded her that she's my wife and she should never hide anything, especially messages from other dudes. She freaked out by saying, "You don't trust me. I can't believe this." I'm sleeping on the couch and then deleted everything off her phone between him and her and blocked him on everything. The next day rolls around and she's still mad at me while I'm also still mad at her. I man up and tell her she's lost some of my trust, but if she was being honest, that it really was nothing, then I would forgive her if I can see the message. The next day, I got woken up by a call from my coworker, a different one, that my friend killed himself the night before. I was dumbfounded and shocked. I had just seen him 2 days before, and we were talking about him taking a day off to go fishing. I could tell that my wife was taking it hard too, and I thought it was odd because she had only met him 3 or 4 times. A few days later, the day after we celebrated our 1 month, I got a call from the wife saying she needed to talk to me, then unloaded information that my wife and friend had been talking about for months. I came over and she showed me the messages that said, "I can't wait for our future together. I can't wait to meet our children. I love you," and talked about how magical the other day was. I scrolled through the messages for about 30 minutes and didn't even get to the end of the week. The last text he sent was to my wife saying, "I love you. This isn't your fault." When I came home, she was gone. I went on a 2-day bender with no contact with her and called my family to let them know what happened. They then put me in contact with their lawyer, and after close to 6 hours of talking to him, I decided to file for a divorce. Last night, I got a message from her that said, "I want to work through this, and we should both go to individual and couples counseling." I haven't messaged her back. I'm terrified that she will try to rake me over the coals, but I hope that she is civil about everything and says, "My stuff is mine and your stuff is yours." I hope that she isn't pregnant too. Update. First, I wanted to say thank you to everyone for your support. This has been a hard few weeks, but I've gotten through it mostly sober and well enough with the help of my friends and family. Second, I'd like to explain the backstory a bit. Me and my future ex-wife have been dating for 6 years and engaged since February. We got married in September, and in most of that time we dated, I worked over the road for 4 years. And in the last 2 years, I settled into a nice little town where there was steady work in my field that didn't require me to move around a lot. Third, the man that she cheated on me with was a good friend of mine. He lived in the same town that I settled in, and we were fishing buddies for 2 to 3 years. I got him a job with me, and we worked together for 3 years. I've had him and his girlfriend over at my place for dinner, and have been over at theirs for dinner multiple times. I didn't invite him to our wedding because of a joke he told where the punchline was about sleeping with someone's wife, and he stared at me for 1 or 2 seconds too long and it made my stomach churn. Fourth, I discovered that my wife broke things off with him the day before he committed suicide and that my wife was the last person he texted before doing the deed. I did not attend a funeral or memorial service for the recently departed. I've been trying to keep my contact with my wife to as little as possible, answering questions about health insurance and other similar things. Shortly after my first post, I hired a lawyer and had him start writing up the paperwork for a divorce. 3 to 4 days after she left, I was told by my friend that my wife texted her and said she was in the hospital for a suicide attempt. An hour later, I got a text from my wife saying she was released because she promised not to hurt herself to the staff. I think she was lying. That's not how hospitals in that area deal with life-ending attempts. A day after that, I got the Apple Watch from the departed man's girlfriend, which has messages dating back to the day that we got back from our honeymoon in early October. I gave the watch to the lawyer, and he has all the messages and pictures now for the case. They both deleted messages, so I can't see them till we get the phone back from the police. There has really been no other communication besides setting up a time when she can come and get more of her clothes. Me and my friend's girlfriend have talked occasionally, and I thanked her for telling me, even though I know it must have been extremely heartbreaking for her. I'm going to be gifting her a lot of stuff, or just probably anonymous cash in the mailbox to help her and her daughter out. The divorce was filed, and she should be getting served soon by the end of today or by next week. I still do not think she knows about my plans for divorce, and I'm fine with that. The lawyer said that our state is a no-fault state, so technically she would have the ability to try and claim half of my things, but since the marriage was so short, the judge will just separate us with our things from before the marriage. I'm not looking to go after anything of hers. I don't want her car. I don't want her money. Not that she has any. I just want to keep my house, car, dogs, and retirement, and I just hope that she is not pregnant. So after a while, more and more people from work started telling me that they knew about the affair but didn't want to tell me because it wasn't my place or I didn't want to make things awkward. Apparently, the guy was not quiet about it and was sending her nudes around work. So I've had guys coming up showing me my wife saying, "Hey dude, isn't this your wife?" I also learned that she sent him money a couple of times, part of the money that I had sent her to pay for the wedding. I also learned that they had been continually calling each other daily 3 to 6 times a day for months, and at some point they had gotten a hotel room together sometime in August or September. She has continually lied until I brought up all the facts. She got served this weekend, and I couldn't be happier, although everything honestly seems bland and bleak. I spent the last 6 years of my life dedicated to her. We were planning our future, and she threw it all away, and she really thought that there would be some semblance of forgiveness and a relationship that we could heal together after this. I have my family and certain friends to thank for their constant love and support. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for your advice and support through this time in my life. Wow, Opie, I'm incredibly sorry to hear what you have gone through. In my opinion, the only reason that your wife wants you back is that she can't have him. Her affair partner is gone, and knowing that means she needs someone to fall back on and sees you as that person. I'm glad to hear you did not tolerate that whatsoever and served her with divorce papers. Now she's lost both her affair partner forever as well as her husband forever. She will now pay the consequences of her actions for the rest of her life and will have to live with the guilt of knowing that she ruined her marriage and caused another man to take his life. Talk about karma. Best of luck to you, Opie. Now, let's get into today's second story. My ex-girlfriend and I were together for a little over a year, and I'm convinced she's a total and complete narcissist. I struggled with codependency, so it was a match made in hell. I was always too attached to her and continuously chased the love and affection she showered me with in the beginning, which quickly went away and never returned. Last November, she started seeing a guy that she works with. They're both personal trainers at a gym. I know I should have realized she would be shallow and dull, but I was just always in denial about her. There were all kinds of red flags that I ignored or made light of to avoid being alone. She was always belittling, demeaning, and gaslighting me. I had a habit of defending myself and would constantly argue with her. In November, right around our 1 year mark, she went to a movie together with another girl trainer and this guy. I will call him Steve. She didn't tell me about Steve or their plans until she was about to leave for this movie and got a call from him to confirm. I could hear it in her voice that she was into this dude. She lit up and was smiley and flirtatious. I told her this bothered me, and she again gaslight me and shut me down, then went anyway without considering to invite me. I was mortified. Shortly after that, she told me she wanted time and space from all our fighting. She used that time to go to a work party with Steve and then came back to his house after for a number of hours. I now know they watched a movie and he romantically showed her how to play guitar. Most likely they kissed then, but she claims nothing happened. Originally, she lied about this event entirely and said she was just out with work friends for a while and then came home and that Steve wasn't there. Before this, when agreeing to the space and time, I asked if we would promise to not see other people until we decide whether to separate fully or stay together. We lived together at this time as well. One time after the initial signs of infidelity, she said her passcode out loud one time, so I memorized it and was able to read their messages. I kept this hidden from her for a long time. I originally got her to tell the truth by saying my intuition was telling me she was lying, and it worked. There's probably still more to the story that she left out. After she came clean and stopped lying, I almost left her, but she begged me to stay. Foolishly, I did. We moved into a new place together almost right after this to satisfy her unhappiness. Shortly after, she went out and did the same exact thing again. This past weekend, I had a funeral to go back to in my hometown on Sunday for my first cousin to whom I was close with. I kept asking her to go with me for the support weeks in advance, but she had an inventory meeting on Sunday and made excuses for why she couldn't get out of it. Her and I got into a fight, so I left early on Saturday. She told me she was going to stay with her parents again after we got into that fight. While I was in town visiting my family on Saturday, she told me she was going to hang out with one of her girlfriends. She was so lazy about it that she didn't bother even giving any details. I instantly knew it was a lie. Sure enough, when I got home Sunday night, I read the messages on her Apple Watch she left at our house. Turns out that the night before, instead of being with the girlfriend she said she was with, she was actually with him. They went out and ate food, then went back to his place, and were there until 11 p.m. I called her immediately and confronted her about it after I read their conversations, and she again persistently lied to me. She began to say they just hung out shortly after work and got Chipotle. After I told her I read her messages and knew she was lying, she finally knew she was cornered and confessed that she went there and that they kissed. They probably did more, but she claimed they didn't have sex. She was completely void of any remorse or guilt and actually got defensive and turned it around on me. Last night, she came to talk to me about moving her stuff out of our place, as we were clearly breaking up, but her actual motive was to come searching for her MDMA pills. I had already thrown them away. She got furious and started telling me she was never sexually attracted to me and just forced it always, and that my quirks are weird and not lovable, and that she will eventually have sex with this guy just to rub it in and twist the knife in even further. We all know they have already had sex. She lies whenever she can. I have definitely told her off and given her an earful, but still I feel so depleted and angry. This is the worst betrayal I've ever experienced. I had a 1-year-long relationship with a pure narcissist. Here's how I know for sure. She brought the guy to my house after the cheating and breakup. Earlier in the day, I sent her an email telling her I'm going to leave all her stuff out on the sidewalk since I knew she spent the night at his house last night and lied to her parents about where she was staying. She didn't respond to my email, and hours later, her and her new boyfriend literally showed up at my house unannounced and tried forcing their way in. I fought them off and didn't allow either one into my house, then stepped outside and had a verbal and then physical altercation with the douchebag. The guy was a small, bulky gym rat loser. We broke my aloe pot fighting, and after I scared them back off to her car. After they left, I moved all of her stuff outside onto the sidewalk and porch. Some things broke in my anger. Hours later, my ex and her dad came to pick it all up. I was inside, but then I walked out, and as I passed her, I spat in her direction while speaking on the phone to my grandfather. I walked to my neighbor's porch who had witnessed the fight, and he came out to watch with me. She walked over to us and asked me if she needed to expect the police at her house since I had threatened to file a restraining order. I replied, I don't know, maybe. She grumbled something, and then my neighbor, and I told her to leave, and she did. That was the last time I'll ever speak to her. Opa. I do not mean to pile on your pain, but I need to say this out of concern for you. You come off as quite the doormat in this story. You clearly knew a long time ago this girl was toxic, was going to hurt you, but you persisted in trying to fix the relationship. Please stop. If someone treats you disrespectfully like this, lies to you like this, at the first sign, walk away. Not every relationship works. Not everyone is good. I wish you the best of luck in the future, OP, and hope you can heal from this situation. Thanks for taking your time to listen to today's stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's stories. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me.